Hey guys, Julian here, and today I'm going to be talking to you about how to make lo-fi deep house like computer data. I'm going back to my roots with this one. I have not made a lo-fi house track in a while, but today I'm back with all new techniques and new ideas to show you guys that I've never shown you on the channel before. Shout out to you guys who have been there since the early lo-fi house days. And yeah, as usual, you can get this full project file, samples, MIDI, presets, everything like that from this video is available at the top of the description, and if you're a patron on my Patreon, check there, because it's already available. And yeah, let's get started. Alright, so here's the loop that you heard in the intro. We're at 123 BPM, and the first sound that we have is this vocal stab, which sounds like this. So you can hear, this is just this little vocal thing droning on one note. What it is, I'll play you the original sample. So it's just this. It's like a... And then it's just playing that one note, and then you can see here it goes... It just goes up +5. And then the idea is that it's just creating like this long, droning, just kind of spacey thing, because we have, you can see some echo and some reverb on it. And if we play this over top of the chords, you can really hear. So you can hear what that does for the track. Just having that like constantly droning on that one note, it adds almost like a context to the chords. And yeah, so that's the idea with this one. And then after the echo and reverb, we have a bit of drum bus, which, if you'll notice with the drum bus, so obviously it's fattening the sound up, you know, it's making it a bit more lo-fi, giving it that texture. But you're going to see this throughout the project file. I'm using this damp knob here. This is really, really good for lo-fi house, because what essentially creates, like, the lo-fi sound, quote-unquote, is, and you'll see this as we go through some of these other sounds, is like cutting off the very high highs, like, it's like the high end is still in there, you know, it's not just completely only mid-range and lows, but you're cutting off like those very peak highs. Like, you'll see it with the next sound I'm about to show you, the hi-hat. And this damp knob does a really good job of doing that. So here's without that. If we just turn it up, you can hear it sounds a lot more like just in your face. But the damp knob just helps to give it that lo-fi feel. And it's something that's hard to really put your finger on too, like that sort of missing high frequency thing. I've really just picked up on it because I've been studying this stuff for a while and I've really broken down what it is. But yeah, it's like that subtle high-end missing effect is going to do a lot for this. And then you can see we also just have this auto pan here, which is making this sound like it's sidechained to the kick. I have the phase on 0, so we're not doing any panning. It's just making the volume bounce up on quarter notes like that. And yeah, then we have the drums. So you can see we have this hi-hat here, which you'll see the hi-hat really has that effect I was telling you about. You can see with this one, I use a low-pass filter, and yeah, if I turn that off, let's just turn it on. You can really hear the difference, like not having that little high end on there. As subtle as it seems, that's really what's going to make the sound. And you can see I've also taken the sustain and decay down a little bit and pitched it up. Because you want this to still be a little bit like, you don't want it to just be a like long held out forever hi-hat. You want it to be a bit sharper, so shaping it like that really helps. And then we have this tom. So you can hear this is just playing some nice stuff to kind of bounce off of the kick. The way we're doing this is it's just using 30-second notes, and then you can see we have like the velocities building up, so it creates that nice little roll. You know, like if you were like playing it by hand. And then I just have this being shortened a little bit with the amplitude envelope, and that's really it. This one, you know, the thing with like a lot of lo-fi house is that it's got like classic house stuff. Like if you listen to these three elements together, you know, this is a classic house groove, but then you bring in this tom, like something that's a little bit out there that you haven't really heard in a lot of house music, like just having that roll. And I think that's really what makes this style. It's something old with something new and fresh that can be as subtle as just using a tom like this. But yeah, that's the idea behind that. Then we have the kick. And so the reason why I have the kick in this group here is because it's actually 2 layers. We're using one for the low end, and then one for the mids and highs. Because if I turn off this thing, you can see this one that we're using for the mids and highs doesn't really have the best low end. Like, it has good low end, but it's not quite as big as we want. So I'm using this EQ3 here to take just the mids and highs, and then we just blend that with this one, which you can hear this one has really good low end and mid range. But the high end isn't as good. It doesn't really have that punch to it. So then we take just the low end and mid range on this one. And there you go. You create a whole new kick out of just 2 kicks. These are just 2 kicks that I had made that I had laying around. You can see I zoomed in and made sure that the start of the kicks lines up. That's something that's really important if you're going to do this. Because like if we put this back, it's less than like a millisecond that we're moving that, but you can see the difference that it makes. And then on the group, we just have the kick going through a bit of drum bus. And yeah, so that's how you take 2 kicks and kind of make one out of it. It's a really great way to be able to make brand new kicks. And you can take the thing you like about one kick and the thing you like about another kick and just make your own kick out of them rather than having to just choose one and sacrifice what you like about the other. Then we have this clap. And the main thing here is you can see I did that little high-end cut as well with the low-pass filter here. The secret to that is you're cutting off a little bit of high-end and then you turn the resonance up. And we could do even more. You know, that really gives it the lo-fi feel. But yeah. And then you can see I also pitched this down a little. So the main thing with this is it's just going to be this like super big fat clap that is going to be a bit lower pitched. It's another one of those things that makes this a bit unique. It's just like how the claps are a bit lower pitched, because typically in house music, you know, you'd have a higher clap. The other thing is I have some drum bus on this, and you'll notice I have this compressor on because we really want that full like body of the clap. Like you really want that. And if I turn the compressor off, see, it's not quite the same without it. And then on the group of drums, so you can see all we have here is actually just a bit of saturation and drum bus. So the thing with this style is, you know, a lot of times you would take your kick and your bass line and put them in a group, and then you would put all of your drums and put them in a group. But with this style, you actually want to just put all the drums and the kick in a group together. And the reason why is this stuff. Because if you listen, hear how every time that kick, I'll play just the kick and the clap. Hear how you get that like kind of crunching between the clap and the kick? And if we play just the hi-hat and the kick, you can hear it there too. You know, we're trying to get the feel of like everything kind of being crunched together, and you don't really get that if you put the kick and the bass line in a group and then have the hi-hats and percussion separate. Because like, if I take the kick out of the group, for one, the kick isn't quite as fat. This also does make the kick a bit fatter, just having it like kind of punching through these other drums. But you're not getting that crunch. So it's important to put the kick in the group with the rest of the drums actually for this style, because it's more about the kind of giving them all that even texture than it is like, you know, making sure that your kick and your bass are going to be super working together, because the bass line is going to be fine if it's already just like really fat. So yeah, so we got the saturator there and the drum bus. So here's without those. You can hear the saturator does a lot of that crunchiness. Turning that bass frequency up adds a lot of that. And the drum bus just does the final sort of push there. And yeah, then we have our chords. So what's happening here is we actually have just major and minor 7th chords, and then this last chord here. That's just a regular 7th chord. But then what we're doing is I've taken the 5ths, actually. If you look, like, all these low notes, well, those two in particular, are just the 5ths of these chords. If you look, it fits right into that same place when you put it up an octave. And this just kind of helps to create a little bit of a different feel. I was noticing when I was referencing this with computer data tracks that, like, you know, you have to have something kind of interesting going on musically. Like, it's not going to be just, like, you play a chord, root note, minor 3rd, 5th, and then that's it. Like, with this style, you kind of have to know what you're doing musically, and just adding those root notes as the 5ths as the root notes, I should say. See, that's just a root note. But then we do it again right there, and even here. Just having those just is gonna make it a bit more, like, kind of interesting and exciting, and it's like, if I turn those off, you'll see what I'm talking about. Like, those are cool, but there's just something about adding that 5th that makes it feel a lot deeper and bigger. And also, if you look at this, like, these are kind of just fitting into pretty basic major and minor chord patterns. Like, if you look at this, so we have this major 7th chord here, and then this chord is just following, if you look, it's got the same 3 notes, and then we're just adding that one on top. And then, like, down here, then we have that 7th chord there to kind of mix it up at the end, and it resolves really nicely back to the start. For the sound, this one's made with analog, and so we've got 2 saw waves, and what we're doing is we have a low-pass filter, which has an envelope and an LFO on it. But then if you look, I'm actually sending it 100% to filter 2, and if you look in here, we're using, I'm pretty sure it's this routing, where the filters are routed to each other. So what's happening is we have a low-pass filter going into a formant filter. So if I turn off the formant filter, and then there's without the low pass. You can hear, yeah, we're just putting these together, and then the interesting thing is that the formant filter kind of gives it just a more, like, just a different texture, honestly, that you wouldn't usually get out of chords like this. See, it's a really good way to just try and give your sound some more texture. Then we have the amp envelopes set like this, kind of a bit more plucky, because you want this to sort of hit, and it holds out for a while, but it's sort of like the volume's going down. It's getting quieter over time, that's the idea. But it still holds out the whole way. Then we have some vibrato and unison, which you can see it's a pretty good amount of vibrato here, and that adds a lot of the texture to this. Here's without it. You know, it's very just like straight, but with it, it gives it that vintage, more lo-fi house sort of feel. Then we just have some chorus and some reverb, giving the sound some space. I have a high-pass filter going into this drum bus here, because the drum bus is fattening the sound up. But listen to it without the high-pass. And then with it. It just cleans it up a little bit, because what's happening is there's a lot of low frequencies coming out of the synth. And if you put drum bus on the low frequencies and those higher frequencies at once, it's going to just push up the low frequencies. But if you do this going into the drum bus, you're going to just make a little bit more room so that the mid and high frequencies are fattened a lot more with the drum bus. Then we have the EQ8, which is, yeah, just cutting on some low end, also cutting out right there because there were some kind of messy frequencies happening there. And then finally we just have a compressor to sidechain this to the kick. And that is the chords. Then we have the bass line, which here's the MIDI for that, so it's just following the chord progression. But you just want to keep in mind that this is still playing the regular root notes. Like if you look at this, remember I was telling you these? That's like a chord, and then that's the extra fifth voice that we added underneath. So we're still playing all of these actual root notes. It's not playing like those fifths. And yeah, just playing at the same time as the chords, you know. You don't really want to have like a super bouncy bass line with these tracks because that's kind of where that tom comes in. Like between this and the kick, that's giving that low end groove. So the bass line here can just be this long, fat, held out bass. And for the sound, we're just making a pretty standard respace sound using wavetable here. So you can see we just have 2 saw waves. They're at the same octave, going into a low pass filter. And then what makes the sound is we have a ton of unison on here. And that's what creates that big, fat bass wave. And then we just have some drum bus to fatten it up a bit. And then a compressor to sidechain into the kick. And then the last thing that we have down here are these vocal harmonies. So yeah, these are just providing that last sort of melodic element and just some nice, like, driving vocals like this. And the thing is, it really doesn't matter what you choose. You just want something that's going to sit really well over the track. And, something that's a bit more held out does kind of work, like how this is like... like kind of ringing out over a longer time like that, I think works really well. So the original sample sounds like this. It's just this really nice vocal harmony. You can hear it's pretty high pitched as well. And then when I've just kind of taken it in here and chopped it, like I took that first part and I put it, you notice like it starts on an 8th note. It's not just like it's just hitting right when the track starts. It's not just like you just go. Yeah, that's boring. You have to find like a cool place for it to fit in. So like, I kind of like having it go. Like it hits on that upbeat there. And then over here it hits on the upbeat as well. And then over here we took just the... But yeah, for the processing here, you can see this is the one that has like the most sort of lo-fi processing. So the first thing here is we're low pass filtering it. Yeah, with this right here. So that just kind of, I'll get rid of everything so you can kind of hear from the start what's going on. So we have the dry vocal. Then we have this low pass. So you can hear we're just giving it that lo-fi feel, getting rid of some of those highs, and just making it a bit more kind of mid-range focused. And it also obscures it, it makes it a little bit less obvious what it is. Then we have some chorus, which you can hear just spreads it out and makes it sound very lush. Then we have this erosion, which obviously, makes it feel like it's being bit crushed, which really helps to recreate that sort of like old school sampler effect, like the old 12-bit, like Amiga computer samplers and MPCs and pretty much any sampler you can name. Kind of gives it that sound where it has that crunchy, kind of bit crushed feel, and we're just recreating that with erosion. You can even do like a little bit less, like you could do like probably that much will be good. And then you can put some reverb on it, which you can hear just gives it some space, kind of helps to make it ring out so it doesn't just start and then stop right the second the singing stops. Then we have the drum bus, which you're hearing obviously brings it all together, really makes it full sounding. And also that's making it even more lo-fi because I have the damp knob turned on. And then you can see we finally just have a compressor side chaining into the kick. And yeah, there we are. So, that is going to be it for this one, guys. I hope you enjoyed. As always, make sure to like this video as well as subscribe. And let me know what you think of this video in the comments. Like I said in the beginning, you can get the full project files, samples, MIDI, presets, everything like that from this video is available right at the top of the description. And if you're a Patreon, my Patreon, check there because it's already available. Thank you so much, guys, and I will see you tomorrow with another video.